Hello and welcome to World Insight with me, Tian Wei, coming to you live from Beijing on CGTN. Coming up on today's program, in Catalonia's snap election, the pro-independence bloc retained a majority while the Unity Party gained the most votes. Have these indecisive results prolonged the Catalan crisis? The South Korean cryptocurrency exchange Youbit was hacked and lost 17% of its value. Do cyber thefts ruin Bitcoin's chances of becoming the currency of the future? You're watching World Insight. We want to begin our program in Spain, where the pro-Unity Citizens Party has won the most votes in the Catalonia election. Citizens Party gained 37 seats with 25% of the vote, but the pro-independence bloc, consisting of 3 parties, kept an absolute majority in the 135-seat regional parliament. So it's unclear what is next after this. Before our discussion, take a look at this package.
Ciudadanos, led by Inés Arrimadas, became the first constitutionalist party to win the most votes and most seats on Thursday.
It has been made very clear with this result, as the biggest single political force in Catalonia, that the social majority in Catalonia is in favor of union with the rest of Spain and with Europe. The nationalist parties will never again be able to speak in the name of all of Catalonia, because we are all Catalonia.
However, the pro-independence bloc, consisting of 3 parties, Junts per Catalunya Party, Esquerra Republicana, and Popular Unity Candidacy, kept its absolute majority in the 135-seat regional parliament. The ousted former president of Catalonia, Carles Puigdemont, spoke to supporters from Brussels, calling the vote historic. The Spanish state has been defeated. Rajoy and his allies have lost and have received a slap in the face from the Catalan people. They have lost the plebiscite through which they wanted to legalize their coup d'etat of the 155, and Catalonia has not helped them make that possible. Rajoy has sunk in Catalonia. The snap election was called by Spanish Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy after he sacked the Catalan regional government and dissolved the regional parliament in late October. This was in response to an independence declaration by separatist regional politicians. But now it's unclear which party will form the new government. Catalans expect the election will end the crisis, bring stability, and re-establish international trust within the region.
Before our discussion, let's check with our correspondent in Barcelona, El Goodman. El, welcome to the program. Help us understand, with the latest result coming out, how is the public in Catalonia that you are interacting with been reacting to this?
Well, we've interacted with people on both sides, and the society is right split down the middle. If you look at those results from the Thursday elections, even though the pro-independence parties got a majority of the seats in Parliament like they did in the elections 2 years ago, the other parties that do not favor independence actually got more of the popular vote. Now, how come they came up with more seats in Parliament? Because of the voting system here. It allows these parties to concentrate their votes, especially in the provinces around Barcelona, the capital of Catalonia, where there's more independence fervor in the provinces than here in the big city of Barcelona and other major cities right around. So we've talked to people on both sides. They're either joyous or they're kind of disgusted.
Right.
Generally.
We understand that the leaders of some of the pro-independence parties are actually outside the country. They're either on exile or some of them even in prison. But for now, what is the leadership like for these parties? Are they likely to come up with a very concrete force in order to get more hold of the parliament and eventually the government?
Well, the Parliament will meet in January to try to vote in a new president. The problem for the pro-independence parties, they have a very slim majority, just a couple of extra seats that makes their majority. The problem, as you just mentioned, is that 8 of their elected leaders are either in prison in Madrid on charges of rebellion because they led this independence push unilaterally, which is not allowed by the Spanish Constitution, or they're with the ousted president, Carles Puigdemont, in Brussels. And if they come back, Mr. Puigdemont and 4 aides who are with him, as soon as they come back into Spanish territory, they'll be arrested and they'll be taken up to pretrial prison on those same charges in Madrid. So does the math inside the parliament allow these people to carry on this majority? Well, we've heard this morning, for instance, that these people will stand down and other people lower on the electoral list will take their place. Would Mr. Puigdemont do that? There are so many questions here and so much confusion, and this was supposed to bring clarity, and it has brought anything but. However, Mr. Puigdemont politically has been reinforced because his party came in first among the independence parties, knocking off one of his rivals. His former vice president is in prison in Madrid on these independence charges.
Our very own Al Goodman in Barcelona. Thank you so much, Al. Now let's go to our panelists for Catalonia Parliament election. We are joined in London by Ian Begg, who is a professor at the European Institute with the London School of Economics, where he co-directs the forum which is researching the future of Europe. In Barcelona, we have Isabel Helena Martí, who is a member of the Catalan National Assembly. I want to welcome both of you. We have voices coming from inside Catalonia and also from outside. First of all, Ms. Martí, are you surprised of the result? From the result to the next step, what are we talking about here?
Well, good afternoon, first of all. I'm very happy to be here with you. No, answering your question, I'm not surprised at all about the results. More than 80% of Catalan people in a clear way had demanded a pro-independence, a self-determination referendum, more than 80%. Mariano Rajoy, instead, he sent the paramilitary police forces, and Catalan voters were brutally, had to endure brutal violence. Later on, that was not enough. He crashed the Catalan self-rule. He closed down the Catalan chamber. He dismissed, as it has been before, he dismissed the Catalan government.
My question
is why what is Catalan people talk.
Okay. My question is, from now until the next step, what do you think would be the things that should be happening? How to form the government for January, and what is likely to be the interaction between the Catalonian government and the central government in Spain? Very briefly from you, Ms. Martí.
Yes, Mariano Rajoy suffered a very humiliating, a very severe defeat yesterday, and the pro-independence and the legitimate Catalan government has been legitimized or re-legitimized again. So what's going on is that we'll have a renewed mandate, and the pro-independence parties will manage to get an agreement and rule the country again.
All right.
That's what will happen next.
Of course, one could tell very clearly that Ms. Martí is very much on the pro-independence stance. Let's go to Mr. Begg about this. Was it a mistake for the Prime Minister to call for an election of the Parliament inside Catalonia? Obviously, the result very much goes against the original assumption.
Yes, and I think that what it exposes is the deep divisions, not just in Catalonia, but in Spain overall, about how to deal with this very tricky problem. Rajoy stepped in a few weeks ago because he was concerned about secession by Catalonia, where it would break away from Spain. And that matters for the rest of Spain, not just from the point of view of territorial integrity, but also because Catalonia is a net contributor to the public finances and strength of the Spanish economy. So he couldn't really afford to lose Catalonia. And yet, on the Catalan side, what you see is a complex mix of voting patterns. You get some areas, particularly towards the French border, where it's very strongly pro-nationalist. Barcelona, where there's a substantial number of immigrants from other parts of Spain, is much less in favor of independence. So it's all going to be very complicated to deal with.
It is very complicated. If you take a look at the makeup of the economy, Catalonia's elections are important because more political uncertainty could weigh on and the economy as well. Spain's economy, it is 16% of Spain's population live in Catalonia and produces 25% of Spain's export, 19% of Spain's GDP, 20% of foreign investment. So you can see Catalonia, important region of Spain. Here is the thing, Ms. Marti, since you're from the pro-independence camp, let me ask you, do you think there's any chance that the Spanish central government will allow Catalonia to go independent while Catalonia is contributing so much to the overall economy and to the overall land of Spain? Is it ever possible?
Well, first of all, I don't think he should allow or not
That's the central government, right?
Their own future. I think we are entitled, because we are a 21st century democratic, European democratic country. So it's up to the people to decide whether or not they want to become an independent country. It's not up to the Spanish government or the Popular Party to decide whether or not we're entitled to do that. We own our own future. That's the first thing. Second of all, precisely from an economic point of view, it makes lots of sense, the independence of Catalonia. And that's an important, not the most important, but that's one argument in favor of independence. We have a big problem here of the money that is collected in Catalonia. At least 16,000 million euros each single year disappear, never come back. Madrid collects the taxes, and this amount of money never comes back here. There is important lack of vital, very important investment in infrastructures, and our economy is resenting this lack of investment from Madrid. So precisely from an economic point of view, it's very, very important that Catalonia has control of itself.
From all the point of view of the Catalonians themselves, but Professor Begg, when it comes to secession, which is a topic that the central government in Spain have been talking about a lot, is that when a region of a country is seeking independence, there has to be two sides of the story. One is, quote, a vote within that region, which would, in a way, express what people want. But on the other hand, there has to be a referendum nationally, which you see in Canada, for example. You also see in some of the other countries when one part of the country wants to seek independence. And when the two results coincide with one another, that's when a region of a country could eventually claim independence. Professor Begg, do you think the previous practice of this could still work this time?
Well, I think what you correctly expose is the difficulty of deciding things by referendum. Now, in this case, the elections are different. They brought to power, well, may bring to power a pro-independence coalition. But we've had that elsewhere, for example, in Scotland, where there has been a pro-independence regional government in Scotland, and yet it doesn't necessarily lead to the independence of the state from the rest of the United Kingdom. So I think you have to be very careful about looking at how different electoral systems affect this pro-independence demand, and also pose the question of whether the real solution to this is not so much independence, but a much greater degree of autonomy for the region which is agitating for independence. One of the solutions in Scotland was to say, let's give them more public finance autonomy.
Yes, I'll go into those details, but Professor, when you talk about the electorate system, what about your observation of the Spanish electorate system and the Catalonia electorate system? Is it really going to help us understand better about how things is likely to be done and should be done? Professor Begg.
Well, with difficulty, because Al made the point in your package that the Catalan system results in a disproportionate number of seats going to the Independence Party, even though they won a minority of the popular vote. We've had this elsewhere. Even Trump has been elected on precisely the same sort of formula.
That's right.
So you have to look at the detail of things to work out what it's telling you about what people actually want, as opposed to what the immediate political outcomes are.
Ms. Marty, is the issue of autonomy a better option for both sides? Wouldn't it be a better option than coming out with nothing, Ms. Marty?
Well, a few years ago, the pro-independence movement was not majoritarian like now. What happened all those last years is precisely a lack of dialogue, a lack of political will to reach an agreement. Mariano Rajoy's inflexibility to try to deal in a democratic manner with the ongoing demands of the Catalan people have been making this problem more and more steep. That's, at the end, the problem. I don't agree that we should see the problem in terms of the electoral law, because this is a political problem. And this problem should be, or this conflict should be solved through political means, through dialogue, through talks. And this is what has been lacking from the very beginning for years from the Spanish government side. So what we need right now is Mariano Rajoy to sit down with no conditions and to talk to the Catalan people and try to understand, to listen to people and to reach an agreement. Because this is about democracy, this is about politics.
But Ms. Marty, here's a technical issue. Probably even more than a technical issue. When you say the Prime Minister should sit down with the Catalonian people, who are the Catalonian people you are referring to? Is that the pro-independence camp that you're talking about? Of course, he's going to hear one side of the story. Or is it somebody else? But if he is listening to somebody else, would the pro-independence camp suggest him as sincere or not? Ms. Marty, so when you say Catalonian people, don't forget, the Citizen Party still get 35% of the vote.
Well, we just went through an elections yesterday, and there was a very high turnout, 82%. So the results of yesterday's election are a very clear picture of the political preferences of Catalan people. And it was very clear that there was a renewed pro-independence a popular mandate, because there is an absolute majority now in the Catalan parliament. And from that parliament majority, it will come out a legitimate Catalan government. Those people will be the ones that will represent the will of the Catalan people. As all governments all around the world, Mariano Rajoy has not an absolute majority, and he's the one that represents the Spanish state. And that's the same for the rest of the world. So that's exactly the case in Catalonia. Our legitimate government, which comes from an absolute majority of pro-independence political parties, is the one that represents the Catalan people.
We need to have the other side of the story. Professor Begg, there are several things. One is, it seems that from Ms. Marty's suggestion, a lot of fire is targeting at the current Prime Minister of Spain about his way of doing things, his way of dealing with the so-called pro-independence. Second thing is about how the government in Catalonia eventually is going to be formed. Will there be more ups and downs before the government eventually come into being in January? Thirdly, how will the international community, including the European Union, react to this? Will they have an impact on what's going on in Catalonia and also in Spain? We could say it's internal affairs, but don't forget, this could set the precedence for many other European countries which could have similar issues. So, Professor Begg, there seems to be a lot of undetermined factors over there. What do you make of these factors?
Well, it's undoubtedly a mess. Let me start with your third question. I think the view of the European Union is pretty clear, which is that this is a domestic Spanish political issue, and it's not for the European Union to make any statements about it. And that's been endorsed as well by the two largest countries in the EU, France and Germany. Now, what creates complications in this is that Spain's domestic regional arrangements are very complex. They have different degrees of autonomy for different parts of the country. The Basque country has more autonomy than Catalonia has, but many other Spanish regions have less autonomy than Catalonia has. So to deal with this in a context in which you have a minority government in Madrid as well, struggling to keep its power, is a very, very toxic political mix. So when you put all these things together, plus the fact, this may sound frivolous, that Mariano Rajoy is from Galicia in northwest Spain, and these are people who are famous for being slow to make decisions. When you put all that together, I think it's not easy to predict until we see how the dust settles on this week's election, how it's going to move.
Ms. Marty, it is not without evidence that what is going on in Catalonia is creating a lot of echoes and ripple effects, not only in Catalonia among the people themselves, but also the other parts of Spain. There are people who have similar opinions as you do, but there are also many people who have very different opinions from what you just suggested. So what would this mean, do you think, from your perspective? If you are being asked to look at the whole picture of your country, Spain, let's just suggest for now, what does it mean for Spain? And will Catalonians be able to afford that? Some further chaos in Spain and its interaction with Catalonia. Ms. Marty.
I can hear you. Could you please repeat the question?
My question is, what about Catalonia's reaction, interaction rather, with the rest of Spain? What if many of those in the rest of Spain are really against it?
I'm not sure I understood your question. Are you asking me about the impact that the opinion of the rest of Spain might have in the conflict within Catalonia?
Professor Begg. What about that, Professor Begg? Do you think there are further chaos in the country? The rest of Spain will react strongly about this?
Yes, I think they will, for the reasons that we've been discussing earlier, the importance of Catalonia to the Spanish economy and to public finances. And don't forget, democracy is not just about what the majority wants. It's also respect of the minority in many cases. And as you pointed out, the Citizens' Party, which is quite right-wing in Catalonia, has a significant share of the vote. But also, the rest of Spain didn't vote on this notion of independence for Catalonia. So it becomes layers of democracy that would be relevant. You could say, my street wants to vote for independence, but a street is not realistic. So you need to elevate it to a higher level to discuss where independence or the boundaries of the state are most appropriate. And I think one other thing to consider in this is that Catalonia would face great difficulty as an independent country in maintaining its position in the European Union. That's something that has been in the debate, but we've not yet mentioned in this program.
This is a very emotional issue, but at the same time, also a lot of issues involved, including within Spain and beyond. For now, people are already becoming very emotional about the election result so far in Catalonia. What's going to be the next step? Nobody knows. But for now, I want to thank the two of you for being with us, Isabel Helena Marty and Ian Begg. Thank you so much for being with us. I really appreciate it. You're watching World Insight with me, Tian Wei. Still to come on our program. The South Korean cryptocurrency exchange, Youbit, was hacked and lost 17% of its value. Can Bitcoin's rapid rise outweigh its inherent risks? You're watching World Insight with me, Tian Wei, coming to you Monday to Friday on CGTN. Bitcoin futures began trading in the U.S. this month. Meanwhile, data shows that Japan, South Korea, and Vietnam accounted for 80% of the global Bitcoin trading at the end of November. But This Tuesday, a South Korean cryptocurrency exchange said it was shutting down and filing for bankruptcy after it was hacked for the second time this year. These cases highlight security concerns over booming virtual currencies. Before we go to our panel about the future of Bitcoin and some of the others, let's take a look at this background story.
Paying for curry with virtual currency. This restaurant in Seoul began accepting Bitcoin as payment several years ago. But with Bitcoin prices skyrocketing recently, diners are choosing to pay using traditional cash or credit card.
Bitcoin prices have risen so much that people see it more as a speculative or investment tool. Customers that used to use Bitcoin in everyday life aren't coming anymore.
The Bitcoin bonanza has gripped South Korea. Everyone from housewives to college students and office workers are rushing to virtual currency exchanges in hopes of a quick profit. But with big potential gains comes the possibility of big losses. That's prompted the government to monitor the market more closely. Greg Yu is the developer of a Bitcoin payment service provider. He believes some oversight could provide guidance to the market.
I don't think it is right to highlight just the negative points of virtual currencies, but with the victims arising from good faith transactions, there are certain aspects that the government should legally manage.
Asian countries have the IT infrastructure and knowledge. That's why you see a high level of understanding about virtual currencies based on blockchain technology in Asian markets.
There's fierce debate over whether the future of Bitcoin is a dangerous speculative bubble. But for South Korean investors, the hope is that bubble never bursts.
For more on cryptocurrency latest tests, we turn to our panel in Beijing. We have Andy Mok, who is the founder of Red Pagoda Resources, provides professional services for startup in China. And let's go to also in Beijing, Jay Huang, who is the founding partner of J-Stone Venture and also former managing director of Intel China. Welcome. Meanwhile, joining us in Belfast, we have Patrick McCrory, research associate at the Department of Computer Science with UCL, UK's first PhD graduate in cryptocurrencies. Welcome to all of you, gentlemen. This is an exciting topic, I would say. A lot of latest news happening all at the same time. What about that, Mr. McCrory, make of the South Korean closing down of the Bitcoin currency exchange?
What was it, sorry?
What do you make of it?
Shutting down the exchange.
Yes.
But in terms of the hack, so they lost about 17% of their assets. So the problem is that they're probably no longer solvent. So in that case, they're probably better off shutting down and trying to return as much money as they can to their customers. This sort of cyber comprehensive insurance, where they're actually covered for $3 billion of the loss. So hopefully most people will get their money back. But I actually thought their approach was very different to what happened previously. So last summer there was another exchange called Bitfinex, and they lost a similar amount of coins. But what they did instead was they gave everybody like a 10% haircut or 20% haircut. I forget the exact figure. So in a sense that the money that was lost in the exchange was given to customers as an IOU. And then as Bitfinex made more money, their customers also made their money.
Okay.
So there are two different approaches. Do you shut down or do you give IOUs?
Right, that is for the exchange. But what about for the Bitcoin itself? Mr. Huang, here in Beijing, we did notice Ms. McCrory suggested hopefully, but hopefully you wouldn't carry us very far, right? So, Mr. Huang, is there a serious systematic problem with Bitcoin and the businesses, including the exchanges, related to it?
I think there's two incidents, and like a bankruptcy and exchange house and being hacked, and indicated the risk. And if you put, as a Bitcoin user, if you put all your trust into the trading house, and then that seems to be very vulnerable. I think every user, they should actually put, every user has to have a public key and a private key. They should store these two keys by themselves in a secured way. But it also says that if the user is not computer savvy, and they may have to rely on the trading house and to store those keys for them. So this has become a risky approach.
Yes, Mr. Mark, this is supposed to be Bitcoin. Help people to trade securely with anonymous identity and also probably be able to do it in large scale. But obviously, these previous two incidents that we mentioned did not serve the purpose and only going the other way around. So, Mr. Ma, do you see much future and hope of Bitcoin?
I'm actually pretty negative about Bitcoin, and the reason is that I see it really as an ingenious con game like three-card Monte. So it's like the three-card Monte of the fintech world, in that as a payment system, it's not clear that it's really better than Alipay or WeChat Wallet. As fiat currency or fiat money, which really is just an IOU that governments issue. And the reason that this works for the US dollar is that the US dollar is backed by the full faith and credit of the United States government.
Right.
Whereas Bitcoin is really an IOU that's not backed really by anybody.
That's true.
So I think it's a very clever marketing scheme, but people have made a lot of money at it so far.
Only a marketing scheme, not the alternative. Mr. McCory, your whole academic future builds on this. I'm sure you have very different views.
No, of course, yes. I have the opposite opinion. It really depends what type of utility you want from Bitcoin. And so it is correct in one sense, in the sense that the value of Bitcoin is based on perception, and it's not backed by any feasible good or financial institution. But that's like this whole basis of Bitcoin itself, because Bitcoin came around back in 2009 by Satoshi Nakamoto, because the idea is that we should not have to trust the banks with our money. So if you consider that your utility and you want to have full autonomy over your coins, then Bitcoin is very useful. And if you want to do trade with other countries, in the sense that you don't want to have to trust any intermediary, then Bitcoin or stuff like Ethereum with smart contracts is super useful there as well.
Got it. But here's the thing, Mr. Huang. Is this just the process of perfecting the system so that the Bitcoin exchanges and businesses related to it will be more secure and eventually take the place of the currency that we're seeing, whether it's US dollar or some of the others? Or this is really almost the end of it? You know, technology happens fast. So Bitcoin, if it doesn't work, let's move to something else. Which is this that we are talking about here, Mr. Huang? It's time to show your color.
I have a different view with Andy, obviously. I think that Bitcoin is one of these crypto currencies, and those cryptocurrencies are designed for decentralized people's trust to central government or central bank. I do believe they have a value in there. And going back to Bitcoin itself, I think Bitcoin and they have limited numbers. For example, only 21 million coins and in there. So just considering it as a collection, it has a value, right? So I wouldn't agree this is like a scam or no value. And of course, and then because so many people right now betting on that, it's become a lot more speculative and then gambling and vehicle than alternative.
But maybe that is exactly demonstrating that Bitcoin is not the way to go if it becomes a tool for gambling, or it becomes a tool for wealth to escape from one entity, one sovereign country to another.
I think I wouldn't go that far to say Bitcoin will replace.
How far would you like to go?
I think at least it's an alternative and a currency, and I can see they have a value. If not Bitcoin, it must be another one, like a new generation of these crypto and currencies will provide a role as alternative to the traditional currency. I do see this as a decentralized and design has a value.
Has its value.
And also has its place.
Has its value, has its place, not only for the financial sector, but also for probably even more than that, Mr. Huang. Because, Mr. Mark, let me go to you about that. Right now, the financial market around the world is dominated by a few currencies, mainly the US dollar, of course the European euro as well. But the question is, how can we democratize the currency future? in a way.
Well,
Will dollar still be dominant? Or can everybody have Bitcoin or some of the other fintech possibilities so that everybody have a say and no one could dominate the market through the currency it controls? Mr. Ma.
Well,
I know you're coming originally from the United States, but go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I am. The way I would see it, though, is that even though I am from the U.S., I'm not necessarily in favor of the dollar hegemony. But I think that this idea of a democratized currency is not necessarily a good idea. Just like we can see currency as like a utility, a public utility. And do we want anyone running our nuclear power plants? The reason I think we do have decentralized currencies is that an important role of a currency is that it is also used for monetary policy to manage a country's economy. And by saying that it's decentralized and making that a feature, it's actually a bug, I think. And that, to me, is the biggest drawback.
I see Mr. Huang is waving his head, but Mr. McCrory is probably doing it even more. So, Mr. McCrory, you want to come in?
Yeah, of course, yeah. So I would have the opposite opinion in a sense. Like if you consider these, well, one thing I would say is they're not really decentralized. A lot of these currencies have two features. One, the blockchain is maintained by a distributed group of miners. And in reality, there's only about 10 people who control that, and that's something we really need to fix. Two, the benefit of these type of blockchain systems is that everything's publicly verifiable. So one issue with the banking system and most finance software out there is that I have to trust it blindly. I can't see what's going on. Where with these blockchain systems, I can publicly verify myself that everything is correct. And that's really important if you want to build up trust in relationships with other people.
But you know,
so for example,
McCrory,
the Bank of America wanted to trade with, oh, sorry.
Yeah, but Mr. McCrory, you know, the counter-argument immediately for that is when you can verify, a lot of the others could use the same tool to verify as well. Or probably not verify by doing something else. So democracy does bring a lot of danger in this regard, particularly in the financial sector. Mr. McCrory, very briefly from you, react.
Well, in terms of the democracy and how democracy would maintain it, a lot of people tend to compare Bitcoin and Ethereum, so the governance issue. How do we govern these currencies? They tend to compare them to businesses and democracy, and I don't think that's a very good analogy to describe how these systems work. Because the idea of a democracy is that you're voting for people and you're delegating your vote out for people to make decisions on your behalf. And that's not how really these currencies work.
I see.
The idea is that if you want to maintain and control these systems, you have to financially invest into these systems and outcompete other people. And that's also why it's not a business, because in a business, you don't really, the more money I put in, the more money I should hopefully make. But that's not really the case for these currencies either. So a better way to think of the governance issue is that it's an idealized free market. We're actually witnessing the very first free market in the world.
We too much idealized it.
Sorry.
Probably there's something just in between. It's not something that we aspire to in a huge way. It's not something that we dismiss easily. Mr. Huang?
I think there's a cryptocurrency. Decentralized is one feature. More importantly, it's transparent. As Mr. McCrory pointed out, and everybody knows and how many get generated, who got what. And instead of, like, for example, we don't know which government print how much money. Those are very important things and for every citizen to know.
And those are the only reason you think it should exist?
I wouldn't say the only reason. That's a very important reason.
But you know, gentlemen, very briefly from every one of you, things are happening very fast, fintech particularly. You see different versions in different country works. In China, you have got the mobile pay. It just worked perfectly in this country, huge population. But you also got Bitcoin popular in some of the other countries. China not yet embracing it because of the so-called risks involved. So are we going to see a global effort to embrace certain possibilities? Are we going to be more diversified and yet drifting apart in our choices of our financial future? Very briefly, from every one of you, Mr. Huang, go first.
I think if every country has its own cryptocurrency, it's going to fail. And then there's at least one of the issue is what's the trading the rate between one currency
That's
versus
right.
another.
We go to the same currency thing,
so
right?
This cannot work, and so it has to be one accepted by, if not all of them, most of them. Right now, the Bitcoin is the one and accepted by most of them.
I see. Mr. Mok, very briefly.
Well, I'm very optimistic about innovation in the fintech sector.
I see you measure your words.
I am pessimistic about the future of cryptocurrencies. I'm not sure that I see these benefits of transparency and trust as being very relevant.
Got it. And Mr. McCrory, final words coming from the first PhD on cryptocurrencies. Very briefly, sir.
My final words. So, what did I say? So when I started my PhD back in 2013, it was considered probably one of the riskiest PhDs around because if Bitcoin died, so would my PhD. But thankfully, it never died. And, and because of that, that's why I'm honored to be the first person to do it.
There we go. Patrick McCrory, Andy Mok, Jay Huang. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for being with us. And have a great weekend, certainly a great holiday season. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for being with us. That is all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more, find us World Insight CGTN in your search engine or check out our YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Sina Weibo. From me, Tian Wei, and everyone on the World Insight team, thanks for watching. Tune in again next time for insights across China and around the world. Good night.